He said, you're gonna get on board, and we're gonna go someplace, and then we're gonna come back, and that's all. And he said, but I want to tell you ahead of time, your brain will no longer
be the same.
You will lose it. You will because it won't understand and it won't comprehend what's happening. So use your mind, use your feelings, come from your heart, meditate, go into a focus point, and go to your higher thoughts and feelings, rather than worrying about what was going to happen. These shutters are opening and shutting and creating all this reality you see around you. It doesn't really exist. It's all spirit. It's all energy. But we're creating this.
Do you want to give us an intro on how you and Otis Carr came together and what your background was at the time, and bring us up to date?
And how you worked with Jacques Cousteau, which is really
yeah,
fabulous.
That's a good place to start. Okay, well, I got out of the service in '54, and when I was in the service, I was stationed on Guam, and they had the Korean outbreak, and they shipped us out in the middle of the night to Korea. We made the Wonchon landing, and went through that situation, which was kind of unpleasant. I got wounded about 4 times, and had frostbite and so forth. And I became very, very discouraged with the military, totally, because of everything. And I was an objector from the start on killing people, so I'd shoot in the air or whatever. They didn't care much for me. But while I was on Guam, the Marines would fight with the Army, and the Army would fight with the Navy at bars. They'd go out and have fist fights. And I preferred to go down to the beach and look around, and I finally got into scuba diving, or skin diving actually, with a snorkel, and found a whole new environment underwater, and I became fascinated with it. And so I kept developing that until the outbreak in Korea. When I got back to the States, I was in heavy weapons. I was in the 3rd Division, 7th Regimental Combat Team, which is nothing more than machine guns, heavy mortars, and big artillery. And that's, even though I had put in for engineering school continuously in my time in the service, they kept putting me back in the infantry. So when I got out, I didn't have much to go on except my interest in diving. So I started a diving business, a skin diving, scuba diving business in San Francisco, and eventually graduated down to Southern California, where my family, some of my relatives and stuff, in Newport Beach and Costa Mesa, California. And I met my first wife, and we got married, and had a couple of children. And I was diving on my own then. I was doing a lot of diving. I was doing abalone diving and research and development diving and recovery diving. And it was going along well, but my wife didn't like the idea that I'd be away for a couple of days on the boat and stuff, because the kids were growing up and they needed their dad and so forth. So, to make a long story short,
I went to work for the manufacturing plant at that time for U.S. divers. Was located in Costa Mesa or Santa Ana, and so I went to work for U.S. divers, which had developed the scuba, Jacques Cousteau's scuba gear. And they, right away, we hit it off because I am constantly a researcher and developer myself. So I went into the research and development department, and we take trips out to Catalina and test. My job was to test the wraparound mask at the one stage. And anyway, I got really involved with that, but we'd stay out longer and longer on research trips. And my wife was getting very insistent that I get something a little less dangerous and a little more domestic, home. So she found this ad in the paper. It said there's Advanced Kinetics is advertising. They need lab techs, laboratory technicians, and research technicians. Why don't you go check? because your interest has always been in science, and you're always off. When I get home, I'm always tearing things apart and stuff. So I went over there, and it was lunchtime, and everybody was out to lunch. I was walking down the hall, and I passed the director's office, Dr. Weinhardt, and he said, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm looking for a job." And you had an ad in the paper, and he said, "Well, they're all out to lunch now." He says, "Come in, let's talk. What have you done, and where's your background?" I don't have any credentials except bumblebees and lizards and things that I've studied, and I found out that there's quite a bit of credibility to natural law that I apply to things, and it always works. So he said, "Magnetics, you're interested?" I said, "Yeah, I've studied magnetics all my life. I love it." And well, coincidentally, the guy that was working on our magnetic project he just left. And come to work tomorrow morning, you're going on the magnetic project. I said, "Fine, great." So what it was I had a workbench, and there was a cathode ray tube, firing electrons, and I had an oscilloscope mounted with a camera, high-speed everything, and through a magnetic field, I was firing these electrons. And he said, "Take pictures of them. The idea, your goal is to get one electron completely through the field without deflection, without it being pulled to the positive or negative." I said, "Fine, no problem. It's an easy job." So I just kept taking pictures, quite extensive and expensive. Every day, it was about $1,000 worth of work every day that was paid for by the taxpayers for the research. And I started questioning it, and my affiliation with nature told me that they were using force.
Brute force.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't work with nature.
It
doesn't work with the laws of nature. So I said, this is never going to work. I can appreciate this guy leaving. He got fed up, and I was getting there fast. So I went home, and I'd gone to garage sales and collected, I had an audio amplifier, I had a frequency generator. I had different things at home that I tore apart a TV and got a cathode ray. I started the experiment on a small scale in my living room floor, and I set it all up and got everything the way I felt it should work. And instead of forcing the electrons, I pulsed them. I just gave them a pulse, and that's all I did. And they, on their own, started a circular motion.
Attracted in their own pattern and how much they wanted to at a precision
Yeah, and
moment.
they went from negative to positive all the way through to the end of the...
You're just feeding it back to the source.
And I said, my God, that was simple, because the first shot went through, and then I did many, many more, and they all went through without deflection at all. And I said, I'm happy. This is going to give me a raise, maybe. So then the next experiment, on the bench next to me, they were working on levitation.
They?
Other technicians, other engineers were working.
In what department were they
Or
working
in
with?
advanced kinetics, in the